Hey friends, welcome to another Q&A where I answer some of your questions from the videos that I have posted since my last Q&A, and hopefully other just general gardening questions. If you have general questions, you can always leave them as a comment to this video, but I also go back and answer questions from other videos as well. Trying to do these a little bit more frequently. We went a long way there. Just a quick update. We're going to be bopping all over the place because I also want to give you some updates of some things that you have asked about. Just a quick update from the last Q&A, which started out rather perhaps maudlin. I'm feeling much better now. I gave myself a deadline last weekend, and I said if it's not in the ground by Sunday night, it goes in the compost pile. And with the exception of some shrubs that I wanted to make a video, there's a couple of plants I want to make videos of showing you. With the exception of those, that happened. And it was good because most of what went into the compost pile was weak seedlings. And they might have grown, they might not have grown. I got in what I needed to, and we're calling it good. So let's jump right into questions here. Forgive the phone, that's where the questions live. I'm going, and this time I actually have them organized, I believe, in order. And I believe this starts with the last Q&A I did. So, Karen Nald says, I'd like more information on your personal experience with jumping worms and what effect you're seeing. Are they all over, just one area? Have you tried tea seed meal, etc.? So I've talked a little bit about jumping worms. I don't get into it a lot. It's right now, fortunately, it's a fairly localized thing on sort of East Coast areas and Midwest. You know, it's probably going to go everywhere eventually. But I do deal with this invasive worm called a jumping worm. It's called snake worms, the crazy Asian worms. They call them all sorts of things. I just go with jumping worm. And I'm pretty sure I know how they got on my property, although I'm sure which was in a load of topsoil. Maybe I want to say 4 years ago, maybe more than that now. But I'm sure they have come here in other ways too. Even if I hadn't gotten that load of topsoil, these are so prevalent in our area, they would have been here anyway. So to just briefly answer that question, because I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this because I don't think it applies to many of you. They're mostly localized here. There are some areas where I have them worse than others, and some areas where I see the effects of them more. One of those, unfortunately, is my front border. I'm certain I have moved them. They don't move quickly. They sort of colonize an area. They move slowly. But I'm sure I have spread them around because they have very small eggs that you can't see, so you carry them on tools. That's why what they always said was you should not let people on your property with machinery unless like their machinery has been cleaned. You should clean everything that comes from a nursery. I mean, nobody did that, and I understand that. So that's why they're so prevalent. Anyway, I have tried tea seed meal. It might have worked. I mean, the problem with this is that there is no solution to these that has been peer reviewed. There's a lot of things people are trying and that have hope, but there's no answer right now. So I have tried some of those things, and they might have worked and they might not have worked. Like, how do you know if they're working or not? Because you still find jumping worms no matter what. They're not gonna get them all. And the worst thing is that they can have up to 3 generations a year. It's really a problem. What I mostly do with jumping worms is kill them when I see them. I believe that almost all the worms I'm finding in my garden now are jumping worms. I believe that they have outcompeted any of the other European jumping worms that were here, or excuse me, any European worms that are here, which we think of as earthworms. In our area, I mean, down in the south, this is a little different, but in our area of the country, there are no native worms. They are not native to this area, but they have been here for 200 years or something. So they have adapted more than these jumping worms have. I have tried tea seed meal. I don't know if it worked. This year I am trying, I believe it's a nematode from Arbico Organics. There is a lot of birds singing this morning from Arbico Organics, and I tried that. I don't know if that made a difference either. I'm also using a lot of biochar. One of the side effects of biochar is that it's said to be bad for worm populations. They don't like that that harsh feeling, and I don't know if it kills them or they move on or what. These are the things I've tried. So someday, you know, once there's more, I mean, the problem is I'm like everybody else. I'm just trying things. And I don't want to go tell you guys to go do things because I'm just trying them. There is no evidence that these things actually work. Worse yet, there's no real studies about the negative effects of these things that we're doing. So, you know, it's an issue. Most of the things, there are some people who have reported having a lot of success with some methods. Unfortunately, those things also affect the other earthworms and other bacteria, other organisms in the soil. So there's a give and take here too. So that's why I haven't really talked about it a lot, but I'm working on it. Those are the things I tried. Mary said, well, she said a lot of things, but she said her purple bell vine were not growing very quickly. And that has been my experience too. Same thing this year. I feel like it's every year. For whatever reason, those things, I mean, they really need extended periods of heat before they really start growing. Let me show you the two I have at home. The one I have at the office is actually growing better, but let me show you one of the two that I'm growing at home so you can just see what mine look like. I think you can see these are looking fairly pathetic, but there is new growth here and they're climbing. I mean, this is one of those things where, I don't know, I feel like I might turn around one day and all of a sudden they're covering this whole thing, which has been my experience in the past. So mine are looking pretty weak too. We'll see what happens. Somebody asked how they moved the cottage next door. I think I have a video of that. So I wasn't home when they did it, but Mr. Much More Patient was, and I think I have a video of it that I can slot in here, a little bit of it's kind of a close-up. Basically, they put giant steel beams underneath it, jacked it up, and then they put it essentially on basically rollers, 10 feet at a time. It was sort of, you know, Egyptian pyramid style. There was a crew of 4 guys who every 10 feet they had to reset everything they were rolling on. So it took, I mean, I don't know how far they moved that. Maybe that was 200 feet, maybe less, and 150 feet. And it took all day. And then they had to come back the next day and actually get it down onto the foundation. The next video that I did was where I just showed you what I had done in the front border and the window box. And Martha says, your 2019 border remains my favorite and I still use it for inspiration. I refer to that one a lot too. That was a really good one. I forget exactly what was all in there, but the main thing that I remember from it was some great Nicotiana, a lot of lime green in there. And that just created just the perfect pattern. It was so bright. The dahlias did really well that year. It was a really good year in the garden and it looked great. She says, I love the fact that you staggered the height of your support stakes. I didn't do that on purpose. That's all I had. I put the big ones, though I just used what I had. So I used the tallest ones by the dahlias that I know get really tall, like Penn Hill Watermelon gets like 7 or 8 feet tall. And then I used the shorter ones by things that I think will be okay with that. But I'm glad you like it, but unfortunately that was not on purpose. Someone says, Devin Jones says, is that a dryer vent behind the Rise Up Amberness Rose? Does that affect the plants at all? I have a dryer vent. I would love to hide plants, but worry it will damage them. This is a question I get all the time. It is not a dryer vent. Let's go over there and just talk about that quickly. Well, first off, you can see the support stakes that she was talking about and how they're not consistent. Again, that wasn't on purpose. Okay, this is, oh boy, someone better deadhead those roses. This is the dryer vent that she was asking about, and it's not a dryer vent. I know it looks like a dryer vent. This is actually, when we moved in, our stove had a downdraft vent, and so this was the downdraft vent. A few years later, we changed, not a few years, I don't know, 2013 or something, we switched to an up vent because, fun fact, downdrafts kind of suck with a gas stove because they suck the flame. So we switched to an above the stove vent, although we still had that same stove, so the dryer vent was an option. The downdraft vent was still an option, and I mostly used it to cool pies on. So when something came out of the oven, I'd stick it on there and then we'd cool the pie there. Now we've completely eliminated that stove as well. So this is just a defunct vent that does nothing. If it were a dryer vent, I probably wouldn't recommend planting something like a rose there because I do think that would kind of mess with mess with the plant. I think any plant might have a tough time with that, especially in winter when you're blowing hot air on something. It's probably going to get really confused. Seeking pushed up daisies. Wants to know where I got the window box from. I believe I got that from a company called Hooks and Lattices. And I like that window box a lot. It's been there for 12 or 13 years now, and it has held up incredibly well. It's made out of I think it's made out of this, like, I think it's Azek, but it's like a Timber Tech type thing. It's a PVC wood. I think it's actually all PVC, to be honest with you. It has held up incredibly well. It does get some staining on it, but it's actually really pretty amazing. The one thing I would do if I were to replace that, though, is make a bigger window box. I would go out just a little farther. I've done some blog posts on this before and talked about this in a few videos, but when you're sizing a window box, especially if you have shutters, you should size it to the edge of the shutters or in a little bit from the edge of shutters. Don't size it to just the size of your window, because everything looks unbalanced. Like, you need a base. You don't want things to look like the window's going to topple over. I know that sounds weird, but that's sort of the effect. If you don't have shutters, you should still extend your window box out a few inches. I would say, depending on the size of the window, like 6 inches. So if I were remaking a window box, I would go out farther and I would go deeper, because I cram a lot of plants in about 3 rows there, and I wish that were maybe 3 to 4 inches deeper. So go enormous on a window box. You will not regret it. And plus, then you don't have to water as often. Jenny Patterson says, how do you keep your Superbena so nice and compact? Do you prune often? No, but keep in mind that stuff is just growing now. I mean, things are just starting to get size on them. In fact, let's go over there again. So I haven't pruned these at all, but keep in mind that they're in full sun. They've got room to grow. Now the ones down here, I would say not super compact, because they're fighting for a lot of space in there. So getting a little leggy probably, which is fine with me, by the way, compared to these, which have, a fair amount of room to grow. I also have Superbenas over here in the urn. The thing with Superbenas is that they sort of come into flower and then go out of flower. So certainly I notice a big difference about a week after I fertilize them, and I try to fertilize every week. And then I do try to deadhead them if I can. You don't have to, but it does seem to make a difference. And these are starting to get a little bit, longer, which is good. I'm happy with how those are going to. Janet says, have I missed an update? How's your corkscrew vine doing? Don't be discouraged if it is still small. Once it gets started, it puts on a lot of growth, and it doesn't bloom until fall. Let me show you, because we are standing right by that too. The corkscrew vine is down here. Here's this little bamboo stake trellis that I grow. Rise Up Lilac, Lilac Days or something. Some beautiful sweet peas here. And then I put this guy down here. So this is as tall. Oh, it's winding its way up the rows. So, it's all the way up here. So it's actually about 2 feet tall. So it's going. It's doing its thing. I should probably try to transfer that from the rows onto the bamboo stake. And I should probably pull that, whatever's growing behind that out. Anyway, that's how the corkscrew vine is doing. JLA says, the variegated yellow flowering plant in the window box. Cool, I like it a lot. New to me. Does it have a common name? So I'm assuming you're talking about this one. This is Lysimachia Waikiki Sunset, which I showed in the window box here. And still, by the way, still no variegation on those other two. Only variegation on this one, just kind of mottled leaves on the other two. Don't know what that's about. Okay, so Lysimachia, I don't know about the common name thing. Lysimachia is often known as Creeping Jenny, because the lime version of this is sort of called Creeping Jenny. I don't know if that creeping... I'm going to try to position myself in front of pretty things when I turn the camera around here. That's Pearl de Azur clematis up there. I don't know if that Creeping Jenny common name is common to all Lysimachia, or that's just to that specific one, but Creeping Jenny is that same family. The next video I did was where I planted the petite knockout roses down at the office. So somebody says, I would love to have them, but Japanese beetle decimate roses. So I just saw my very first Japanese beetle last night on the pear tree when I was working on the pear tree. So I do get Japanese beetles too. So there's a lot to know about Japanese beetles. Certainly some areas have them worse. Some years are worse than others. There are ways you can protect plants. You can spray plants. Usually what you're spraying them with is something that is not good for other bugs. So keep that in mind. The key thing you should do with Japanese beetles, if you do nothing else though, is when you see the first ones, you gotta give those guys the soapy water treatment. Put them in a jar with soapy water, kill them that way. You don't want to squish them. Japanese beetles, my understanding is that they send out sort of scouts. So the first Japanese beetles that arrive sort of tell everyone else where the good stuff is. So, I mean, I think we're anthropomorphizing there a little bit, but I think you get the idea. So it's really important to get those first ones and kill them in a way that doesn't allow them to release those pheromones that sort of call in all the Japanese beetles. That's, by the way, why Japanese beetle traps bring in more Japanese beetles, because I don't know if there's pheromones in those, but when they start dying, they release all these pheromones and all kinds more Japanese beetles come. So, yes, Japanese beetles eat roses. I have roses in other places at my house. I have dahlias. They eat those too. They clearly are on pears. I just pick them. That's how I deal with them. Now, of course, I may or may not be here to deal with picking them off, so that'll be a bit of an issue. But fortunately, this is downtown, so there isn't, I'm sort of hoping the Japanese beetles don't find them, because there's nothing else around there for them to be interested in. So I don't know why they'd go there when they could go into someone's garden. Somebody says, what about deer? Yeah, deer would be a problem. Deer eat roses. I don't know. First of all, spray them with deer repellent. Second of all, in this particular case, not much of an issue, although the downtown is full of deer, very brazen deer, but they will not come into that parking lot. A deer is not going to walk into that parking lot and eat those. So in that particular space, I'm not worried about it. In other places, if you have deer, you better spray them, because they will come after that. MJ Worcester says, cutie patooties, I wish knockouts were hardy in zone 5. She's in Madison. I've tried 3 times. Love them. Gorgeous, awesome, and then gone. And then there are the Japanese beetles. Knockout roses are hardy to zone 5. Knockout roses were developed, the original knockout roses were developed by Will Radner, who lives in Wisconsin, grows them all, and he's still around, grows them all in his garden. So something else is going on in your case with that hardiness, especially that it's happened 3 times. I mean, sometimes there's a bad winter that just is bad, but there's something else going on there with that. The petite knockout roses are actually hardy down to zone 4. They've actually done further testing and found out that they're hardy down to zone 4. And then she goes on to say, I'm still apt to try one of these guys when they come out with a pink. So right now there's only red in the series, but they are working on other colors. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we see a pink next year or the year after. I would guess that'd be the next color they would come out with. There were several comments about knockout rose. Not several. There were 2 comments in which people said, don't plant knockout roses because they're prone to rosette disease. Okay, you guys, I am not a rose. We know I'm not a rose expert at all, which is why I grow things like knockout roses. But rosette disease, you've probably heard about it if you're into roses, is passed by a mite. It's a disease that's passed by a mite. And it is very much dependent on multiflora roses. That is where this disease starts. The mites go on there, they get infected, they come on your rose, they infect your rose. So the first thing to know is the multiflora rose thing. If you live in an area with multiflora roses growing all over, like the roadsides, you're probably going to deal with rosette. Not a big issue in my area, but know that it's that. Next thing to know is there is no cultivated rose on the market that is 100% resistant to rose rosette. I am certain the breeders are working on that. There is no such thing. I also linked to, and I will link to it here too, an article from the American Horticultural Society that says that knockout roses have sort of become associated with rose rosette, but there have been studies done, and they are no more prone to rose rosette disease than any other roses. They are not resistant to it, but they are not less resistant to it than any other rose. It's just the reason that people think knockout roses are prone to it is because knockout roses are planted more than any other kind of rose. They are the number one rose brand, variety, because there's a bunch of them, that in the country. So because of the proliferation of knockouts, people have more knockouts. Therefore, if people are going to get rose rosette, there will be more knockouts as a percentage that get rose rosette, even though any other rose would have gotten rose rosette as well. So I will link to that article. That is what the article is saying. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but I'm passing along what an expert article says on that. The botanical lark says, would you be putting a ground cover under them? Maybe like a juga, sedum, campanula, or all three? Yeah, I actually thought about planting maybe a sedum under there, like a really tough, like Angelica sedum underneath there this year. And I just thought, well, first of all, I didn't have any of that. And I just thought, let's just let these roses settle in. That soil was such a mess. I thought, let's just let these things settle in for a while and get these going, and maybe I will come back. I think a ground cover there would be much prettier than all that mulch for sure, and probably do better over the long term. Several people said, why am I hearing clopping of horses going by in that video? They said, sounds like you're on Mackinac Island. Well, definitely not Mackinac Island, obviously, but I listened to it and I can hear that. In fact, I think 17 people liked that comment alone, but there were multiple comments about that. Here's what it is, you guys. The street, well, two things. The streets in that area need a little bit of work, and also when I filmed that video, they had some of those whatever those things they run across, those like sensor lines that they run across the road to gauge how much traffic is coming through. And so right in front of the office there, so every car drove over this. So I think that was the noise you were hearing. That did sound a little bit like horse hooves. It was not. Okay, next video was the update on the screening privacy hedge. And I didn't catch the name on this one when I make the screenshot of this comment, but somebody says, I'm a bit confused as to why there are so many low-growing plants when screening is the goal. So, you know, I didn't want to, I talked through all that in the original video, but I totally understand that some people don't catch when there's a series of videos on the same project. People might not be up to date on what that is. So it's a completely valid question. So to answer that question specifically, the answer is that when we designed this, we removed, some of you will recall this, we removed enormous old 50 to 70 foot tall cedars that had no screening at the bottom whatsoever because they had been eaten up by deer. They were 8 feet, there was 8 feet gap on the bottom, then they went up 50 feet. So in addition to being extraordinarily wide and taking up a lot of space width-wise, they were taking all the sun from our property. We were pretty much in almost full shade, and I was very close to having to rip out a garden and redo it in a shade garden. Worse than that, we were not getting sun in our house, which, you know, is like, I gotta have light. I need real light in my house. So that was the other problem. And then, of course, the problem was we didn't have any actual screening because of the no screening at the bottom. So the goal when we planted this was, first of all, not to create a monolithic planting. We did not want a row of anything. We didn't want a wall. We wanted a screen. That was number one. Number two, the goal was to provide screening that doesn't get too tall. We are not looking for plants in the next 20 years to get, you know, over 30 feet tall here. We don't want that. That will happen in time with some of these. Most of these are lower growing varieties. Second of all, we only need screening that is sort of tallish on the eastern half of this area. The western half area, there's nothing to screen that's tall. So that's Third of all, we only need screening on the eastern half of this. I mean, tall screening on the eastern half of this, because that's where their living area is. On the western half of this, there's nothing to screen. It's all beautiful open area. So there's nothing for us to screen there. So in particular on that side, we were not concerned about height at all. Now width is a different story. And that's why we've chosen some plants that get very wide, but only 20 feet tall. 20 feet tall will block anything that we're gonna see over there because of the angle here. 25 feet wide will block a whole bunch of things. So that's where things like the pagoda dogwood and the cornus moss come in. And then in terms of why we picked low growing shrubs, well, that's because we picked taller growing trees for the areas where we need them, very specifically placed. And then the lower growing shrubs, we want a solid block at the bottom. We want, 4 feet high. We want that to be a solid block because we want screening at ground level. So we're not seeing cars go past, and when cars are parked there, we don't want to see cars parked there. And they don't want to see our cars parked in our driveway. Obviously, this goes both ways. So the lower part of the screening is equally as important as the tall screening on the eastern side of that. So that is a totally valid question, and I hope that helps explain sort of our goal there. But our goal was, again, not a wall, a total block at the bottom during the, most of these are deciduous, so during the, spring to fall time, and a sort of screen, see-through screenish type thing on the top. Blake asked a question that I think is kind of funny. He says, what do your close friends think about you being a popular garden YouTuber? Fun fact, most of my close friends have no idea. I don't talk about this. I mean, this is not a topic that comes up. Most of my friends know me and have for years, know me for my other job, the job that gives me my regular paycheck and my health insurance. Most people know that. They've been living with me with that job for a while. I think they probably know that I do something with gardening, and maybe I make some videos because every once in a while they randomly run across one. But I mean, they don't think they watch them. So, and that holds true for a lot of things. I mean, last year when I was up on Mackinac Island, completely unrelated to gardening, I was walking down the street with a friend, and somebody stopped me to talk to me, and it was great. Lovely people. I always run into some of you guys on Mackinac Island, and it's always fun. And they said, so they asked Mr. Much More Patient, why is that person talking to Erin? And they had no idea. So, you guys are special. You're my special friends. It's not that these people wouldn't be supportive. It's just that, when we hang out together, it's not like we don't talk about this stuff. We got other stuff to talk about. Frozen says, can we see your spireas? I've been eyeing blue kazoo for years. I'm about to take the plunge and grab a couple, but I want to see yours first. Well, I have cut back my blue kazoo spirea by a lot because it was so huge. So let me show you what it looks like cut back, but I did take some pictures before, so we'll show you that on the screen too. So come on, let's go down there. This is blue kazoo after a massive cutback, which you can do with spireas, that's just fine. But you can see all this empty ground here and here. That's empty because the spirea was taking up this entire area. Now the other ones are in shade, and I'm not going to walk over there because I'm lazy. But you can see it looks great. It doesn't have a ton of blue color, but certainly more blue than a lot of other leaves. And it looks a little scandalous right now because I just take like a shears to this and just whack. It will flush out, no problem. In fact, some of this, like you can see, is there some new growth starting already? Yeah, here's some new growth right here starting already on that. So blue kazoo is a winner to me. By the way, I also go inside of it and cut out some of the very old branches as well when I do this. That will bring new fresh growth from the bottom as well, which is always a good thing to do with spireas. Who wants a banana check? Come on, you were all waiting for the banana check. Yes, here is the banana. I don't know how much it's grown, but it's got new leaves, and as the new leaves come in, I've been cutting off sort of the tattered ones, so I'll get this leaf that's kind of tattered next, but putting on good growth. The only problem with it is that Mr. Much More Patient keeps, like, all the corner of his eye keeps thinking it's a person, and it's been scaring the crap out of him. Hey, I did redo this bed. Now we're into update situation here, guys. I did redo this bed, and I did remove the Johnson's Blue. Somebody had recommended Boom Chocolata. I like Boom Chocolata. That's exactly what I put in there. And I only put 2 in there. Those will get quite big. Everything else in here is ladies' mantle plugs. I'm simplifying this bed big time. Leaving the, now this Sanguisorba is kind of flopping over, but I'm leaving the Sanguisorba that's in here. Obviously the rose that's in here stays. And the poppies will, when they're done, they'll be done. So we're letting them do their thing now. And then I have this Dazzleberry sedum down here as well. So this area really got simplified. And I did dot in some Cat's Meow Nepeta. So the shadows are tough here. So we will see how this grows. Because I have a kind of big garden tour happening here, private one, in a month. So hopefully we can get these things growing enough to at least be filled in quite a bit more by then. I think we're going to do a tour, but I just want to show you guys, as long as I'm over here, this corner. This is this little bed that I made in 3 hours by just extending the bed that has the Aurelia. There's Dorothy. The Aurelia silver umbrella. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. So down here I've got the Beacon Impatiens. Those are the downy mildew resistant Impatiens down here. We've got Haas Halo Hydrangea here, which, like, you guys, well, we're going to talk about this in a video shortly here. But come on, look at these flowers. Is that not just gorgeous? You know, I replaced the Incredible. Never mind. We're not going to talk about that now. We're talking about that in that video. And then I put in this pot of begonias right here. And, like, I am so happy with that silly little pot of begonias stuck in there. I think it looks so good. I moved some Hacklemacloa All Gold here to get some color in here. Beyond that, we had the Lamium and everything. I don't know. Tiniest little bed. I don't love the shape of it. It should be a little bit rounder over here, but it was good enough for now. I love the fact that it looks like it's been here for a long time. It doesn't look like I just made this in 3 hours a few weeks ago. I think that's called Teaspoon, and it's either Teaspoon or Anne. No, it's definitely Teaspoon. Hasta, and it's a good one. Check out the Etoile Violet Clematis here. Oh, and the jewelweed. Oh. Jewelweed be gone. Okay, check out it grows on both, just grows up the railing by itself. I mean, this is always on my list of top recommended clematis because it just blooms so prolifically. Yikes. Okay, postcards. Okay, postcard time. We got more good ones this week for sure. Thank you for sending them. If you're not familiar with the postcard project, I have been asking people to send me postcards from letting me know what has inspired them in a garden that they've seen recently. Many of these have been postcards from the actual garden, but this might be a garden in your neighborhood that you saw on a garden tour. We're just sharing the garden inspiration, and I am loving it, and I think you guys are liking it too. Iceland. We're in Iceland, you guys. Discover this botanical garden in I'm going to say this wrong as per usual. Is it even postcards if I don't pronounce something right? Or wrong? Akureyri. Only 50 kilometers from the Arctic Circle. One of the northernmost botanical gardens in the world. Columbines, anemones, poppies were all in stages of bloom. My favorite was the Himalayan blue poppies surrounding the fountain. Cheers, Betsy from northern New Jersey. She says this postcard doesn't do the garden justice. Here's also from Betsy. Hi again, Erin. Postcard number 2. Lupins, introduced as seeds in 1945, many parts of Iceland are now blanketed in a sea of purple in June and July. On our journey, we even found them in every corner of the country, below glaciers, volcanoes, and waterfalls, as well as in villages and private gardens. Truly a sight to behold. Cheers again, Betsy. Oh, sorry, it went this way. Apologize. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, Iceland, I feel like I was sleeping on Iceland. It got really popular in the past like 5 years, which is not to say that I don't want to go now, but sometimes it's nice if you're on the beginning of that cusp. Anyway, I mean, I would have never, who would have thought of Iceland as a place to go to look at plants? And clearly it is. Next time you're in southeastern Pennsylvania, which I will be in fall, by the way, you may want to visit the Morris Arboretum and Gardens. The Rose Garden has a gorgeous combination of roses, perennials, and annuals. The property has a casual, spacious feeling compared to some public gardens that I really enjoy. Happy summer. This is from Karen. And this is a beautiful shot from, well, several shots from the Morris Arboretum. Okay, this is wild. I haven't read this yet, except to say that the self-guided tour of the West of Lake Gardens is 45 minutes north of me. Oh, she sent pictures. Okay, let's see what we got here. Dear Erin, I so enjoy watching a gardener from the Midwest, especially one with an endearing Midwest accent, which we talked about last week. I thought I'd suggest a sweet little garden on Lake Michigan to stop at, perhaps on your way to Door County. I threw in some photos of my herb garden, as this year the lavender is lovely. Your neighbor to the north, this is Cindy, and she is just north of me. Okay, this is her garden. Look at that. That is, oh, Cindy, your herb garden is gorgeous. It's so beautiful. Thank you for, look at, I do not grow lavender that well. There are lavender farms around here too. I don't know. It's a personal problem. Okay, this is the West of Lake Gardens that she sent the information from, and it's in Manitowoc. Owned and operated by the Ruth St. John and John Dunham West Foundation. Listed it in the National Register of Historic Places. No public funds are used in the operation of this garden. I must have gotten heat about that. Here's the map. I will have to read about this. And it looks like you can go in the house as well. Well, this is news to me. I've never heard of this. It's the West of the Lake Gardens, which is a cute name since it's on Lake Michigan, which anything on Lake Michigan is west of the lake, on our side of the lake. Thank you so much for sending that. I did not know about that, Cindy, and your garden is beautiful. I love that the return address on this is from Patches of Mayhem. Erin, first, thank you for taking the time to share yourself and your garden adventures. They are informative, entertaining, and honest. I appreciate the time and work you put into them. At the beginning of June, I was fortunate enough to spend 2 weeks in London visiting my daughter, and I was able to see so many gardens. Sadly, many of these did not have postcards or they were not inspiring, but I did find a few, and they are enclosed with some photos for others. Sorry I wasn't able to mail from there. That's just fine. I completely understand that. Well, I saw many. I still have an unfinished list, which includes Great Dixter. Oh, the train strike messed up her Great Dixter trip. So if you do want to take a group trip, contact me. Okay, this is Arundel Castle in Arundel, West Sussex. The ultimate stone water feature, she says. I would say. My gosh. This is Arundel Castle in Chapel Walk. This is Kew Gardens. A couple of pictures. This is Kew Gardens, showing the hornbeam hedge on top and the laburnum arch, both in Queen Charlotte's cottage grounds. That laburnum walk, I've seen that before. That thing is insane. Top is the Palm House at Kew Gardens, and the bottom is the Grand Border. She said just a small portion of it. Yes, because the Grand Border goes on for ages at Kew. Not that I've seen it personally. This is Leeds Castle in Kent. Top is the castle. It is entirely surrounded by a water-filled moat. Bottom is the wisteria tree in the garden. You guys can see that. Oh, I love them. This is at Leeds Castle in Kent, and I love that pot on the bottom. Oh, she included, oh neat. This is so cool. She included the Sissinghurst Castle, their little like newsletter guide, and then at the back it's the head gardener's picks of the month. What? Oh, that is cool that they do that. And then she did include some Sissinghurst Castle postcards, and of course Sissinghurst is just phenomenal. You know, we all think of Sissinghurst for the white garden, but there's so much more to Sissinghurst than just that white garden. Like, for instance, she says, I thought, wow, they copied Erin. Reminded me of you standing in the ferns. That's pretty funny. Oh, just gorgeous. Okay. Thank you, Mary, so much for sending those. Oh, just beautiful. Everybody add those to your list of places to go. Mary, you are amazing for assembling all that and sending that over. Thank you to everyone who sent postcards. If you guys want to send a postcard of something that's inspiring you in a garden this year, we will do them in a future Q&A update. The address is the Impatient Gardener, P.O. Box 99, Belgium, Wisconsin 53004. It is also in the description below. Thank you for sending in your questions, your comments, watching the videos. You are all amazing supporters. I love hearing what you're doing in your gardens, and I hope you're doing something fun in them today. I am officially very late for work, so I better go. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.